Most of the time on the channel, I'm sharing a guitar brand or guitar with you guys. And every once in a while, you guys reach out and say, hey, you need to check out this brand. Sire Guitars, about a year and a half ago, you guys said, hey, get one on the channel and check it out. So I got one. We did a deep dive on it. That was the L7. And I have to say, you guys reacted extremely positively to that video. And then it got so many views that it got the attention of Sire Guitars, who then sent out a guitar so that we can check it out on the channel. And that's why in today's deep dive, we're gonna be checking out the Sire Carlton H7 semi-hollow guitar with this beautiful vintage sunburst finish. So let's start with the headstock. I love that they used the silver script and then silver logo. It looks beautiful, especially with the headstock being framed out in that multi-layer binding. They also are using some basic Sire label tuning keys, a bone nut, and an ebony fretboard on a 24 3/4 scale mahogany neck. Now the guitar has a 12-inch radius fretboard and it has 22 medium jumbo nickel frets. Now the body is made of maple ply, just like any other semi-hollow in this style of guitar, and it has binding on the top, bottom, around the neck, and of course the headstock. And another cool feature is it has a beautiful flame maple top on top of it. Now I mentioned this is a semi-hollow, so therefore the center is solid. It's a solid piece of maple, which is pretty standard for this type of guitar. It also is finished in polyurethane. For the bridge, you have a Sire Tune-O-Matic style bridge with a stop tailpiece and two Larry Carlton vintage style pickups. We'll get into those in the geeky stuff. You have a 3-way switch with 2 volumes and 2 tones. Some specifications that I thought would be interesting to note is that it's made in Indonesia. That's pretty unique. Usually when you see more affordable price semi-hollow, hollow body guitars and acoustics, you're going to see them made in China. It's very rare to see them nowadays made in Indonesia or Korea anymore, so that was pretty notable. Also, just so you guys know, it came with 10-gauge Ernie Ball strings. It has block pearloid inlays, and they did a really good job. You don't see a lot of filler. It looks pretty good. It's pretty clean. So now it's time for the geeky stuff. Starting out with looking at the neck relief, we see the neck is perfectly straight. It might have just a little teeny bit of relief, but it pretty much looks dead straight. Now looking at the action, we're looking at 1.75 millimeters or 0.05, which is considered low or easy to play action. Let's go ahead and check the frets to make sure that they're all level, and we'll go do that by playing each one individually. Okay, no dead frets and no buzzy spots at all. Sounded really good. However, something to also point out is I had complete access all the way up to the last fret. Also, we always talk about the handshake, or where the guitar fits in your hand. One of the things about this style guitar is they put the strap button right there, pretty much right where your palm goes. I'm not a fan of that. I kind of wish it was here. I always feel like when I'm playing, especially up top, that strap button just really kind of hits my hand. And again, that's not exclusive to this guitar. So now that we know the frets are level and not gritty, let's check the fret ends with the sock test, and they feel pretty good. Maybe 1 or 2 little marks, so definitely a 3.5, maybe a 4 out of 5. Okay, so now let's do the bass side of the guitar, and these also feel really good. In fact, they feel just as good as the treble side. Usually we see the bass side is where sometimes they lose it. This is good. I'd give it a 4 out of 5. It feels pretty good. Now looking at the bone nut, the slots look like they're cut really well. Let's look at the depth of the slots to see how the strings sit. Now here's a technique I've shown many times on deep dives. You take your ring finger, push down on the 3rd fret, and then tap with your 1st finger on the 1st fret to see how far above the fret the string is. Doing this, I noticed that it's cut just a little shallow. In other words, I'd like it just a little deeper. Now to show you how accurate using your fingers are, you can see I'm using my little fret wire gauge that I can rest the strings on, and as you can see, it's loose because the strings aren't resting on it. So these are just a little shallow. They're not bad because you can always lower them, but a little bit lower would make it a little easier to play. Let's check out the fit and finish on this guitar. The first thing you're going to see is that spot right there, and what that probably is when they were spraying the paint gun spit a little bit. You don't see them anywhere else on the guitar. Nothing here. Everything looks really, really good. Also, I want to point out how good the binding around the F-holes look inside and out. I went ahead and looked inside too. You can see right here, they did a beautiful job. All the binding looks pretty good, but there is one little spot. Let me show you right here. This spot right here where it looks like maybe they sanded it and the sanding caused to discolor or even a little burn mark or something. Something happened there. I'd also like to point out the pick guard looks a little rough. Another little thing worth mentioning is there's a spot, looks like some glue on one of the F-holes, and I took a file and cleaned it up in about 2 seconds, but just wanted to make you aware of it. So what I'd like to do now is break down the neck and body to you guys. This is a 3-piece mahogany neck. So you have one piece here and then a scarf joint. You can see where they glued it. Now, regular viewers of this channel will know a couple weeks ago we did the 59 Epiphone Les Paul, and the scarf joint was closer to where the headstock is, and that's because there's different kinds of scarf joints. So for instance, in number 1 right here, you can see that's how the Epiphone was done. You'll see the seam right where you see the headstock break angle at. Now the Sire scarf joint is done differently than the Epiphone. It's a little further down on the neck where you see that seam. In my experience, one is not better than the other. Both are really strong. Whenever you do see an issue with them, it's not because of the type of joint, it's because how it was executed by the person making it. This is a very strong way to make a neck, and it just helps the manufacturers cut costs. And something interesting to point out is that there's no wings on the headstock. A lot of times you see where they glue on 2 pieces on the outside. This is one solid piece. So this is just a headstock and then the neck. And then down here at the neck joint, you can't see because of the stain, but I believe there's another piece right there. That's how they're making it thick enough, because obviously it looks like they used a 1-inch thick mahogany board to make this neck. Another cool thing is they're using a 13-degree angle on the headstock instead of the Gibson's 17-degree angle. Makes it a little stronger and still pulls enough string tension over the nut. Now, looking at the body, we can confirm with the camera that it is a maple block in the center of the guitar. So obviously the center is solid, as you can see right here where I've traced it out so you can see it, and then the sides are hollow. I also went ahead and verified the thickness of the top. So it's basically a 5-ply top, which is very common with pretty much all semi-hollow body guitars. The only exception to that is Japanese-made or vintage-made Gretches sometimes are 3-ply. Other than that, everything's going to be this 5-ply top, which is the most common for sure. Okay, now we can talk about where this guitar is really different. If you look at the width of the nut, you're at 40.25 millimeters or 1.5, which is very narrow. This is a very, very narrow neck. And at the 12th fret, we're 51.61 millimeters. Again, this is a very, very small neck. Let's look at that neck carve. For comparison, I want to use the 62 Les Paul Special template for the neck carve because that's a very small neck, and look at how much smaller this neck is. The only difference is this has more of a C carve than you would see on the Gibson, but either way, on the 1st and 12th fret, it is a very small neck. Looking at the neck thickness, we have the 1st fret at 22.18 millimeters or 0.8, and the thickness at the 12th fret is 24.95 millimeters or 0.9. What's interesting about this is not that the neck is just small, they're also rolling the edge to give it that feel like it's been played for many years. That in conjunction with those dimensions makes this a really fast, easy to play neck. So this will definitely appeal to a lot of guitar players, and some guitar players that like their necks a little chunky may not like this guitar. All right, so now let's take a look at these pickups. Now looking at their description, they're just labeled as Larry Carlton vintage pickups. So let's go ahead and look at them. The bridge pickup is showing 8.0K, which means there's not a lot of wire on this pickup. Now looking at the inductance, we're at 4.26, 4.25, so it's not gonna push the amp very hard. To give a reference to that, a Seymour Duncan JB is about 8.23, so almost double, which means the Sire pickup would not be a great pickup for pushing an amp to overdrive. In other words, if you wanted the amp to stay clean, this would be the ideal pickup. I also verified that it has an Alnico 2 magnet by pulling the magnet and checking it. That was because I heard some mentions of that, but it wasn't officially on their website. Now taking a look at the neck pickup, we have 7.77K or 7.78, and again, a low amount of whines, and we have it at 4.09 in the inductance, which again is going to be a great pickup for doing clean tones. Something to point out is neither pickup is wax potted, so one of the concerns you might have is when playing on stage in loud volume, these pickups may feed back a little bit. And some of you who watch the channel know I have a pretty extensive collection of hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of pickups, and I have all this information kind of logged in. And so I want to tell you that that's how I deciphered that these pickups really sound and are spec'd pretty much just like a Gibson 57 Classic pickup. So if you like that pickup, I think you'll like these pickups. They were almost dead on to my ears when comparing them. So another thing that's interesting is both the cavities for the pickups are shielded, and we're going to test them right now, and there you go. So they're using conductive shielding paint to insulate the pickups to reduce the amount of noise. So as you know, there's no access point in the back of this guitar to look at the electronics, so we're going to use a probe camera and look inside. And looking inside, we see 500K potentiometers made in Korea. They look really nice. Soldering work also looks very nice. They have treble bleeds on both volume controls, and they have 0.22 microfarad capacitors on the tone controls. Everything looks quality, but more importantly, everything looks zip tied up and very clean in there. And that's one of the things about guitars like this. You do not want to have a problem because it's just a pain in the butt to fish everything out and work on it. Looking at prices, this guitar sells for about $659 US, and that's when I looked at a bunch of sites and it seemed pretty consistent. Used, they're all over the place. I've seen them sell as high as $799 and as low as $450. Now comparable, you have Epiphone at the same price point, you have Gretsch, you even have Ibanez, and there's a lot of sub-brands like Firefly and stuff, but I would say comparable for quality were the brands I just mentioned. And the last thing to note is the guitar that was sent to me is 8.2 pounds, and the range I've seen is between 7.5 and 9.5 pounds on these guitars. All right, let's go ahead and do some sound samples. I'm running this through a Fender 65 Deluxe Reverb that's all stock with an SM57, and we're gonna start on the neck pickup and just give it a play through and see how that sounds. So let's go ahead and take a look at the tone control. I'm gonna roll the tone control halfway back on the neck pickup. Sweetens up a little bit. So here's without it, a little bright. Right? Let's whirl that back. Yeah, I like it with the tone control just rolled back a little bit. Sounds good both ways. Now what's nice, of course, is we also have the treble bleed on both volume controls. So on the neck, if we roll the volume halfway back, it softens up even more. It gives it into that more of a single coil range. Now it's not single coil, still humbucker, but it will give you more of that single coil. Yeah, it makes it a very versatile instrument for sure. So let's go ahead and go to the middle, and again, all volumes and tones are full forward. Bridge position. And again, pretty sweet. Again, those pickups being just perfect for clean. Okay, so what we have now is a Bad Cat Cub 40, and we're gonna run just a little bit of reverb and a little bit of overdrive through a 112 vintage 30 cabinet with the same SM57. Let's roll the volume back a little bit and see how it cleans up with this amp. Okay, so let's do that same thing, but with the bridge. Okay, let's put the volume back and see what the bridge can do. What are my final thoughts? What are the pros and cons of this guitar? Well, first of all, let's start with some cons. First is that the neck is really small. So if you have bigger hands like me, it was a little tricky playing on this guitar today. As I was maneuvering around, I really felt that it was easy because they're really close together. The strings are close together, and of course, I feel like I can wrap my thumb to the point where I can touch the high E string, which is a different experience for me for sure. That I think I could get used to after playing it for a little while. I think I would actually probably like that, but I can also see where if you're having trouble, it just kind of feels like bunched up on you. So again, someone with bigger hands that likes the bigger string spacing and the wider necks, definitely not gonna dig this. The other con about this is not available. They're very hard. And when you see them, they sell out very quickly, and it's been that way since pretty much the guitar boom of 2020. And so that's one of the downfalls of this guitar, is that if you see one, you kind of get it. And if you saw when I was highlighting the used section, that's why there's some used ones going for over what retail new is. So you just have to find them when they're in stock and get them in stock. So those are the cons. What are the pros? Well, the pros are the neck is really small. If you have smaller hands, or if you like just having not to work so hard to make chords and play stuff, this is an effortless neck. It's one of the fastest, smallest necks I've played on any kind of guitar like this. And don't think fast and small like thin shredder necks. It's not a thin shredder, neck. It's just a really comfortable neck. And if it's something you've been looking for, I think you'll be extremely happy about it. The other pro about the guitar, of course, is the price. $649 for what it's in for. The category of the guitars it's against is very good pricing for that. But of course, a big deal is these electronics. Although they're not name brand electronics and pickups, quality-wise, I think we determined that they are as quality as you're gonna get in a guitar anywhere in this price range. So very cool. All right, guys, as always, I wanna thank you so much for hanging out and doing these deep dives. And as always, thank you guys so much for your time. Till the next time, know your gear. Now just remember, the builders who send these guitars for my review have a drive to make great guitars. They agree to send non-cherry-picked instruments and let me try to find the best and the worst points of their guitar. Nothing I say or show is meant to take away from their hard work, dedication, and I applaud their ability to check their egos at the door and share their workmanship with us. Let's face it, most companies are not willing to do this.